New and Old Malden Planning Subcommittee. My name is Councillor Leslie Heap and I'm chairing the meeting this evening. The councillors who are here for this meeting are Councillor Elizabeth Park on my left, Councillor Andrew Bolton on my right, Councillor James Giles, Councillor Richard Thorpe, myself, and from RBK, Sam Nichols for Democratic Services, and Toby Felton from the Planning Department, who is going to present the application tonight. Just to remind members of the public, the planning application process is constrained by the need to have regard to current planning policy at national, regional and local levels, as well as all other material planning considerations, including case law precedent. The decision-making process is often described as quasi-judicial because local planning authorities have to act reasonably within the bounds of planning law and the above considerations, and are not free to determine planning applications simply because of the weight of public opinion. I don't have to say that, do I? There's a registration scheme for residents and applicants wishing to participate on the planning applications that are considered by this committee. Members of the public who have registered to speak will be invited to come forward to the table in front of the public gallery at the appropriate point. The next item is the minutes. Are members happy for me to approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of July 2022? I know it's a long time ago, but we seem to have fallen short. Is that agreed unanimously? Thank you very much. Members are asked to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or any other registrable or non-registrable interests relevant to items on this agenda. Do members have any declarations of interest that they would like to mention? No, I just want to say for the record that I do live in Westbury Road, further down the other end, but that's all. I don't think that's going to affect me being chair, but I just wanted to say that. Thank you. We have one item tonight, which is 21/01211/full, Thetford Lodge, 16 Thetford Road, New Malden. It's conversion and extension of former care home building to create 8 flats. We have some late material in relation to this item tonight and hope that members have read that as well as the agenda that was sent out prior to that. First of all, I'll call on Toby Felton, William's not here, to present the item. Thank you.
Is that on? Yes, it is. Thank you, Chair. Okay, yeah, next slide. Okay, so here's the application site. It includes a former care home. It's worth noting that its loss has been accepted in a previous appeal decision, but we'll move through that. Okay, next slide. Here are some photos of Westbury Road to the rear on the left and Thetford Road at the front. So this is the main building that will be extended to the left. Next slide. And there again, the main building, and this is the left-hand side of the site. So the main building's on the right, and you'll see there's 2 sort of cypress-type trees there to be removed. And if you can, yeah, next slide, Sam. Okay, so here's just some of the site constraints. So there's parking controls around the corner. You see the sort of triangular shaped site that go around the corner there from Thetford into Westbury Road. The site is within the yellow in the middle one, which is Thetford Road local area of special character. You'll see Presburg Road conservation area, which is a little away from the site, but I suppose potentially could this site could be within its setting. And tree preservation orders here, there are none that affect this site. Next slide. So here we have the existing ground floor plan over to the left and the first floor plan on the right. Next slide. And the existing elevations. So top left is the front, rear is top right, and then the two side elevations below. Next slide. So there's a little bit of history to this site. So this is the previous scheme originally in 2016, which went to appeal. You can see broadly the scheme is similar. You'll see a slight change to the roof of the extension on the left, and there is a change to the layout of the site. But next slide. And this shows you the elevations there. Next slide. So this was refused originally for 4 reasons, which was loss of employment use, loss of community use, loss of specialist accommodation. None of those were accepted by the inspector, and so we were left with the proposal failing to provide a satisfactory number of 3 or more bedroom units. So this is the one sort of reason for refusal that we've been left with. So next slide. And then there was a further submission which didn't provide sufficient 3-bedroom units and was again refused for that reason. Next slide. And this just shows the elevations there. Next slide. So this then is the sole reason for refusal for the previous scheme. So the one we've just looked at. Next slide. So just to sort of summarise that, the first scheme decision was appealed. Inspector only upheld the reason for regarding the mix of units, and again subsequently refused on lack of 3-bedroom units. The current scheme has a policy and compliant mix of 37.5%, which is more than 30% of the units 3 bids. So it's worth just noting that in the late material, because there was an error in the report originally which didn't set out that there was 3-bedroom units, 3 out of 8 are 3-bedroom units. Next slide. So here we have the proposed mix: 5 1-bedroom units and 3 3-bedroom units, 6 parking spaces and 4 cycle parking spaces. Next slide. So the scheme has been amended to, in terms of layout, to there's quite a few trees on the sort of corner of Westbury Road and Thetford Road, and the scheme's been amended to remove the cycle parking and refuse storage from within the sort of canopies of those trees, and around the trunks, and to move it over to the bottom, to the southwest of the site, where you can see 2 trees that are proposed to be removed, which I'd referred to earlier. Otherwise, in terms of changes from previously, in terms of layout, the parking spaces have been amended slightly, and therefore there is a little bit more communal amenity space towards the northern part of the site. The other part of communal amenity space, the more substantial part, is just above, to the north of where those trees have been removed. Next slide. So that's incorrect. But we'll move on to the next. So this proposed ground floor plan, it shows there's 1 3-bed and 3 one-bed units on this plan. Let's move on to the next one. And here we have 2 3-bedroom and 2 1-bedroom. You'll see in the 3 bedrooms some steps which take you up to the next floor, which is where you get the full amount of 3 beds. So if you go up, next one, Sam. Yeah, so those are the 2 third bedrooms for 2 of those units. Next slide. This just basically shows where the extension is, which is over to the left. You'll see that the roof form has changed slightly, and there is now some accommodation in there. So this is the front elevation. Next slide. And this is looking from the side, and you can see where the extension is, which is on the right-hand side. Next slide. And this is the other side, and this again shows where the extension is. Next slide. And this is the rear, and again you can see where the extension is there. Yeah, thanks. And this shows the street scene, which shows the sort of relationship with. Well, on the right is just the corner, and on the left is number 18, Thetford Road. Next slide. And this just shows you a section through which shows, I suppose in particular, that sort of top floor. Next slide. And this shows the proposed bin and cycle store elevations, which are in the southwest corner of the site. Next slide. So there's legal agreements proposed which would exclude owners and occupiers from obtaining residence or visitors permits for any future controlled parking zone scheme which might be introduced in the area. Next slide. So the recommendation is to approve, subject to completion of legal agreement, conditions set out in this report and the late material. Let me just see if there's anything else I need to tell you. No, nothing. So, but I'll answer any questions later if necessary. Thanks.
Thank you, Toby, for the presentation. We have 3 registered speakers on this item: Richard Harris, Guy Cowan, and Chris Flint, if they're here. All of them?
No, just me, Guy.
Just Guy,
Yes.
yeah? Who'd like to speak as objectors this evening? If you'd like to come forward and take a seat, please. You will have 5 minutes to speak. At 1 minute before the end, we will let you know when you've only got 1 remaining minute left.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just get yourself sorted out and just tell us when you want to start, and we'll set the timer.
I presume this is on. Can everybody hear me? Okay. Okay, so my name is Guy Cowan. I live at 43 Thetford Road, which is directly opposite Thetford Lodge. So I look upon this house every day when I come out of my house. So let me, I prepared a few notes with a little bit of assistance, so let me carry on and tell you what I think. The second application fails to include sufficient information to enable any real understanding of its impact and poor design, i.e. no tree survey, no surface water flooding assessment, no traffic survey, and certainly no 3D information. The planning department has not provided any reasons for the previous rejections. However, I hear what has been said this evening, and that I think has encouraged the developer or the owners of the care home to proceed with a slightly amended version of their previous application. These proposals are poorly designed and would be overdevelopment of the site, resulting in a high-density development that does not answer the real housing need for high-quality, livable homes. The existing single-storey ad hoc extensions built in the garden of this former nursing home are being increased to 3-storey additions to accommodate the 8 low amenity flats. The result is a proposal that attempts to provide external private amenity by awkwardly planned fencing enclosures and relies on poorly planned overlooking balconies accessed from bedrooms and not from living spaces, and offers a communal amenity that is unviable and poorly accessed, requiring residents to exit and circumnavigate the property, and is overlooked by balconies that compromise privacy and acoustic amenity of bedrooms and neighbours and adjacent flats, and fails to provide satisfactory level of amenity for future occupiers. Unfortunately, the existing use of green areas was an overdevelopment of the site in terms of footprint and green space, but as the proposed communal gardens will need to be paved or artificial grass, at best less than 10% of the site area is potentially left as a space where something might actually grow. The proposal therefore conflicts with DM10 and DM13 of the RBK Core Strategy Local Development Framework 2012, and which collectively requires development to incorporate principles of good design and ensure adequate and appropriate amenity space. The proposal would also fail to comply with the guidance set out in the National Planning Framework. The overdevelopment of the site further results in 3-storey extensions with balcony to Westbury Road, which is insufficiently set back and is too close to the pavement along Westbury Road. Vehicles being required to manoeuvre back and forth along the entire frontage, southern frontage, i.e. Thetford Road, of the main entrance, impeding pedestrian and cyclist movement and parking inches away from bedroom windows, compromising privacy, acoustics, and causing light interference. A potential occupancy of 20 people and only 6 parking spaces provided, meaning that additional vehicles will be competing for on-road parking around a busy and congested junction. The proposal includes west elevation balconies that overlook the neighbour of 18 Thetford Road and the communal gardens, and create privacy and overlooking issues within the development. Current planting is unacceptable as a long-term screening. The balconies also serve bedrooms rather than living space to family flats and cannot be considered as a practical amenity.
1 minute remaining.
Flat 3, bedroom 1, and flat 2, bedroom 1 show screened amenity space in an attempt to create privacy from communal garden spaces and will fail to maintain acoustic privacy. Both communal gardens require residents to exit the building and walk along or around the entire building to narrow lock gates 700 millimetres wide, shared with cyclists, and are far too narrow for wheelchairs. Access to communal gardens will be severely impeded when parked vehicles are present and inches away from bedrooms. Balcony screening to create privacy between bedrooms and the communal gardens is unviable. The multiple fenced enclosures in bin and cycle areas on the Thetford Road side with no ability to be screened by planting will degrade the frontage and streetscape as a prominent and elegant period building. Insufficient off-street parking, as no parking surveys have been submitted with the application. We believe the real impact of these proposals will be detrimental to both the schools dropping off, doctors, and the other residents visiting the area.
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, just wait there a minute. Do any members of the committee have any questions of clarification of the objector of Mr. Cowan? Councillor Giles and then Councillor Bolton. You have 5 minutes in which to ask and for him to reply to the question, so try and be on point. Thank you.
I certainly will. Thank you, Madam Chair. My only question really is around traffic and parking. The applicant hasn't submitted any traffic management study or parking study, and so I just wondered, from your perspective, you say you live across the road from the property, could you just give us an insight into the current traffic and also parking situation at the site, please?
Yes, my study is on the first floor of my house, which overlooks Thetford Lodge. And therefore the junction between Westbury and Thetford. And I would say that pretty much every morning from about 8:25 to about 9:15, it is absolutely rammed with traffic. And on one occasion, I took some photographs, which I shared with neighbours, where the traffic did not move for 10 minutes. There was a bus, there was a lorry, there were cars, and of course you've got 3 schools in the area. You've got the study, you've got
Westbury House
Westbury
and Holy
House,
Cross Girls'
and then there's the girls' school. So there are a lot of people moving in and out, and that happens not just in the morning but also in the evening. And since I've retired, I am able to observe this because that's my principal place of work.
Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Cowan. It is a sort of clarification in a sense. Is it the development itself that you object to, or any kind of development there, or is it the size and scale of the thing?
In principle, it's the size and scale of it. I mean, the property is basically, since 2015, that's sort of 7 going on 8 years, has not been a care home. It's been used for various people that worked in other care homes to stay, and just recently, I'm not quite sure who's been there. So we would be quite keen to have a good property in the area, a well-maintained and a solid community of people that would want to live and stay there. I mean, I've been 27 years now in my house, and I've got to know my neighbours very, very well, even though I've been working in the city for a long time. And it's really the size of it, the fact that it totally dominates. As I said, you get less than 10% of the existing footprint. It was already overdeveloped, I understand, the footprint by this ad hoc, single-story development. And so if the developer or the care home people were to actually come forward with a proposal which was consistent with, say, providing good family homes, 8, we were talking amongst ourselves, this is my family, that if it was, say, 4 at the maximum 5, then I think that we would probably sort of say yes, and there was sufficient communal areas and access to that. At the moment, anybody parking their car at the front on the Thetford Road side is going to be literally almost rubbing up against the windowsill. And I think that probably unless they are driving a Continental car, they would probably have to squeeze themselves, the driver would have to squeeze themselves out of the passenger seat if they came in from the first entrance.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments or questions of the objector, of the members? I have just one sort of question to ask you. As I say, I live in Westbury Road. It is very busy, and I live near 2 of the schools that I mentioned. Would you not agree that, apart from pick-up and drop-off times, the rest of the road is fairly free of traffic?
Well, certainly not parked traffic, because since we have a couple of large surgeries nearby, we get a lot of people, on the corner of Pressburg and, is it Kingston Road? There's people come and park in front of my house to go to that particular surgery. Then you've got Homewood there, and you get people that park up there because, we've lost one surgery on the high street and people have had to reallocate, and of course they've gone to the nearest one. We've had a lot of building and development work. We've had lorries parked everywhere. So parking and general traffic. Also, I've noticed again since I retired, the amount of traffic that takes a cut through coming off the A3 coming from Surrey, comes off onto South Lane and then takes a right turn up Thetford Road. And often you find a lorry, and because of the positioning of the bollards there, you end up with a 5-minute sort of reverse and a 10-point sort of 3-point turn to try and get round the corner, which holds everything up. So it is quite a it's not a main road, but it's busy.
Sorry, I have to object till 5 minutes is up. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay.
You may go back to your seat.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. Toby, do you have any comments following those contributions from members or the objector? Thank you. Oh, should I do that? No,
Is that on? Yeah, it's on. Just a couple of points. So the council's tree officer has raised no objection to this, and indeed it's worth noting that there's condition 10, which requires an arboricultural method statement, and then 12, which is landscaping and tree planting condition. In terms of the communal amenity space, the amount that's proposed and the combined with the private amenity space does comply with the council's guidance within its residential design SPD. And just one final point in terms of the highways officer. The highways officer has reviewed this and has raised no objections in terms of this application from a sort of highway safety and car parking point of view. And obviously I mentioned earlier, a legal agreement which would allow potential future controlled parking zone should that become necessary. Thanks.
Thank you, Toby. I will now move the recommendation as set out in the agenda report and any changes outlined in the late material. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Moving on to the next item, do any members of the committee have any questions for Toby? Sorry, I saw your hand first. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Toby, for your explanations. Looking at the slides, one of the first slides you showed said 2 trees to be removed, and I think you described them as cypress trees. And then we look at page A11, I think it's item 53, which says no trees to be removed. And then there was a slide quite a bit later towards the end of your presentation where it showed that there were 2 trees to be removed. So I'm a bit confused as to whether trees are being cut down or not. And in fact, we made a site visit yesterday, and I know the area quite well anyway, but it seemed not likely that the development could actually take place without removing some sorts of trees. I just wonder if you could clarify that, please.
Yeah, of course, yeah. So are you able to put the site plan up, Sam? Which does mean you're going quite close to the... there you go. Oh, that's it, perfect. So the changes resulting from the changes to layout have meant that there are 2 trees to be removed in the southwest corner. So, which I've highlighted 2 trees to be removed. So it's those 2 small trees which are tree officer has described as, let me just 2 cypress type conifer trees which the council tree officer, I mean, as I say, there's no tree preservation order on this site, but the council, the tree officer was very keen to ensure the retention of the and improvements to the environment of the trees on the corner, which are nice trees, albeit still not subject to tree preservation order. So that's been that change really, and behind that has been to improve the environment for the trees on the site overall.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, not to labour the point, Toby, but point 53 on page A11 specifically says the site does not have any protected trees, but there are trees present on site and a street tree adjacent. The application form states that no trees are to be removed as part of the development proposed. So again, I remain confused. I guess it looks as though there are to be trees coming down. So this isn't quite right, is it?
Yeah. So when originally submitted, that was correct, but the amendments which the tree officer considers it's a betterment for the trees and that environment at the sort of eastern part. So originally submitted, that was where cycle parking and refuse storage would be. That has changed. So when it was originally submitted, that statement was correct, but since these changes, then there are now 2 trees to be removed. And I did show you the photos of those trees at the beginning. So,
Councillor Giles, did you have a question? And then Councillor Thorpe.
Please, yes, I have a few questions, if I may, Madam Chair. I'll start with the tree point. When we went to the site visit yesterday, there was a rather large Leylandii tree in the front communal space, which, give or take, is where the western side of car parking space number 1 is due to be on the site plan. It doesn't appear to be referenced in the report, but in order to create parking there, the Leylandii tree will also need to be removed. And so I'd just like to, first of all, ask for some clarity on whether the Leylandii will be removed, and secondly, on the basis that it will be, because otherwise this site plan is nonsense, just reiterate Councillor Bolton's point that paragraph 53 appears to be misleading, because we all agreed on the site visit yesterday that there's no way the Leylandii tree can stay.
yeah. So, can you point to where the tree you're referring to is?
I don't have a laser point. No, Madam Chair's quite correct. Can you see where the gate is to the communal entrance, Toby?
Yes. Yes.
So it's, give or take, where that black line is between which is proposed to be a fence, right by the gate. There's currently a very large, yes, just a tad. So go north, Sam. West. To the left, other way. To the right. South. No. Can you see the car parking spaces, Sam, in the southwest side?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Other car parking spaces? No.
Yeah.
Yes, just there. Thank you very
Yes.
much, Sam. There's a Leylandii tree there. It's a rather... There is, yes. There's a lot of foliage there, including a large tree. Google
Yes,
Maps is our friend.
I also have it on Google Maps. So these are the 2. You probably can't see this, but this is looking at the left
Yes.
side.
Oh, so that's what you're saying is to remove?
Yes, these are the trees that I'm saying are to be removed.
I don't actually think the Leylandii is that close to the property boundary, Toby, but I'll take your word for it. But when we were on the site visit yesterday, there were 2 trees at the southwest boundary, but it certainly wasn't the Leylandii. That was slightly more into the property than the boundary. But look, I don't think that we're going to necessarily get an answer on that this evening. So I don't wish to labour the point any further. Some of my other questions. At the north of the site now, the car parking at the north, if we look within the proposed ground floor site plan, it appears to me that car parking space number 6, which is the parking accessed from Westbury Road, the car to the west of the 2, or sorry, to the left of the 2, obviously the vehicle will drive inwards towards the property, and it appeared to me, correct me if I'm wrong please, that the room it would actually sort of the headlights would glare into would be a bedroom. Is that the case?
I have the plan here. So yes, there is a the right hand side of that is a sort of bedroom. Living room, yes. So that one would there would be, but I guess obviously one of the things is there will be six parking spaces. That space could be for the resident of that property.
Well, yes, it could be, but my concern is, and I'm thinking back to 27 Thetford here, that I certainly, for the amenity of the residents in there, on the basis that it may not be a resident that lives in there, I'd certainly be concerned about the bright light sort of shining in to my property. But thank you for clarifying that. My other question, Toby, is with regard to the communal garden, which is to the west of those two parking spaces at the north of the site. It's described on the site plan in the layout here as a communal garden of 21 metres squared. How do residents access that amenity? Because it strikes me that they would have to go out of their main entrance and in effect either walk round the sort of hard standing or round actually onto the main road to get back into it. It doesn't seem to me to be a particularly easily accessible piece of communal space.
So from the from the front door, as you say, yes, you actually have two choices of ways to go around. You could go either way around the building, so through the other communal gardens, or you can go round the other way. Just going to check the site plan.
Thank you. Just because
there obviously are some other. Actually, no. I think you would have to go round that way. Actually, I think looking at that, because I think there's a private amenity space on the west hand side. Obviously,
Right.
those people would have slightly easier access, but because they could come out and they could go into to there, and obviously some of the other private spaces potentially would allow access, but most people, certainly people on the upper floor, would need to go round anti-clockwise around the building. But as I mentioned earlier, this is in that respect is similar to what we had previously. In fact, that is an extra piece of amenity space which wasn't there under the previous scheme.
Yes, but I guess what I'm trying to look at is whether or not that's viable amenity. You may recall with 27, you must forgive me, this is only the second application I've sat on, but you may recall with 27 Thetford, one of the big discussions we had at this committee was over viable amenity, because residents were having to walk out of their front door and in effect walk approximately 50 metres to access the communal space. And so that was the rationale for my question around that, and I have concern over that. And I guess my final question, Madam Chair, through you, is with regard to the size of the gate to get into the, if you like, main communal space, and also the cycle store. My understanding from looking at the plans and from reading through the public comments, it's been suggested that that would be 700 millimetres. Or 70 centimetres sort of wide, the gate. I wondered if you could confirm if that was the case, and secondly, whether or not that would be actually wide enough to get a human and a bicycle through to access the cycle store for 4 bikes.
Yeah, so 700 millimetres would be. You would be able to get a bicycle through there. I think you could probably get a bicycle through somewhere like 600, but so there wouldn't be much spare space, but there would be sufficient space to get a bicycle through.
And with regard to wheelchairs?
I'd have to check, but my understanding is that would also be sufficient, but I can double check.
Just because my understanding is that there should be a minimum clear opening width of 840 millimetres for a wheelchair. The standard actual width of a wheelchair being 640 millimetres, but obviously then you also have to give space for the user's arms, hands, etc., to be able to propel the device. And so I'm just thinking from a disability perspective here in particular, in terms of how people will actually access this amenity, again, looking at whether or not it's viable amenity space. I mean, if it is 700 millimetres, and again, clarity would be welcome, I would certainly struggle, as being someone of a slightly larger build, getting my bicycle through a small space, and myself. And so clarity on the width of that, please, I would welcome.
Okay. Yeah, look, I will see if I can work out precisely what that width is. I suppose there is potential, if that were, say, the sole issue, to move those parking spaces just slightly south, to get that extra space. But let me have a check.
Yes, if you could, please. I think that's all the questions I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Giles. Councillor Thorpe was next, and then Councillor Bolton again.
Yes, thank you. I'm struggling to get my arms around how the use of this building has changed and how that has changed the number of people. So if I'm looking at the number of people, we're looking at 20 people moving in. The counterfactual is not the current empty building. The counterfactual is the building as it operated as a nursing home with residents and staff. Do you have any numbers on that, Toby? How it looked before, how it was in?
Yeah, so it was a 15-bedroom care home previously. So we've looked at the figures in the report, which basically set out, I think that's about 8.3 equivalent sort of residential units. So it provides that sort of level of housing. So actually very, very similar.
And then there would have been staff, and I guess deliveries. I mean, there's a residential home in the street I live in. There's deliveries, big deliveries every week.
Yes. I mean, it's quite a while since it's been operating, but yes, there would have been all of those things. There have been people coming to the site and deliveries and all of those sort of things. Not that there won't be some deliveries under the new.
Amazon coming round, yeah, I know. But it's
Absolutely.
not quite the same scale.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. So in terms of actual density in the streets and on the site, the numbers may not be that different.
No, very
That's
similar.
really helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. Toby, it's a question for you again, of course. Just a quick one about how the flats are going to be heated. Is there anything green about what the plan is? And apologies if I've missed that in the paperwork.
No, I think these will basically, because it's not a major development, so major being 10 units or above, then the sort of London plan policies don't kick in, and so it will have to meet building regulations, which have recently gone up. They go up every few years in terms of the standards. So the standard of these, from a sort of sustainability point of view, will be pretty high, but it won't be controlled by planning. It will be controlled by building control.
Okay, thank you. So I'm getting a bit irrelevant here, I suppose, but it would be nice to think that they'd done as much as they could on that, given the situation we're in. But you're not able to say exactly what they're doing.
No, they haven't indicated that there will be any. Certainly, I suppose always the route for improving sort of energy performance is to ensure that you've got well insulated walls and things like that. And then some of the other things, such as solar panels and things like that, and electric sort of heat pumps, those do help in terms of reducing sort of carbon. But the main thing is to get the structure right. But building control will control that. We don't in this case.
No, thank you. But just one very slight follow-up. It would have been really helpful, I think, if the applicant had been here. We could have simply asked them, couldn't we? But anyway, thanks very much.
Thank you. I have some questions too, but yeah, for clarity, the extension that's already there backing onto Westbury Road, is that going to be demolished and something else put there, or is that going to be built on? That's my first point.
I'm not 100% sure. I wouldn't be surprised if it's going to be demolished and built on. Let me just have a look.
No.
So I'm not sure.
You know the bit I mean.
I do.
That's the modernish bit. But
Well,
it's
the
one
single-storey
level.
bit,
It's a
yeah.
single story
Yeah.
backing onto Westbury Road. I just wondered whether that was going to be knocked down and started again, or whether it was going to be added to. Because in the document it said conversion and extension. So that could be anything.
Yes, I'm not sure we... to be added to. Yes, certainly will go up, but whether they would start from the ground and work...
I don't know if it's a new extension or they're just going to add to it. And I think there's a lot of clarity that needs to be... it's a pity. I also want to pursue Councillor Bolton's point about how they're going to heat these homes. Is it going to be all electric? I wouldn't have thought gas boilers, because they're definitely out of date. I mean, this is a comment, but I would want to know what sort of heating was going to be used for these 8 units. And another question for clarity, am I right in thinking that the amenity space is there in accordance with the London plan? The balconies plus the community space plus the outdoor amenity space for some of the units means that they're covered, it's all there for the London plan, it's all... They've got sufficient. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yes, well, actually, it's the
They've got
council's...
50 square metres, haven't they?
The council standards are higher than the London plans, actually. So we have
Yeah.
local standards which take precedence over the mayor's standards. So the mayor would require 5 square metres per unit. We asked for it to be 10 square metres per unit plus any shortfall to be made up to add to the communal amenity space. That's it in short. So I think we end up with 84 square metres of communal amenity space, and the 50 plus a shortfall of 32 gives us 82. So it's close, but it's just enough to comply.
Could I ask you to put me to the paragraph of that, because I didn't see that in the document. The
No,
figures that you've just quoted me.
it isn't in the document. It's in the submitted information. In the information that's been submitted with the application. But yes, no, there isn't a section in the report which specifically sets that out. I suppose in part, obviously, we're the application, the previous application has been refused on the lack of 3-bedroom units. So a lot of the points have been considered previously, and you know, so we haven't necessarily gone to every detail there, but those are the figures. I have gone through and worked those figures through.
Thank you, Toby. Does anybody else have any more questions? Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to pick up on that about amenity space. The communal garden at the top still puzzles me. It seems to be a rather small space right next to car parking space, a space where cars will be manoeuvring. There doesn't seem to be any obvious fencing, and in order to access it, it does require a hell of a walk from the front door. And so I just wonder, Toby, whether or not that would be considered viable amenity space within our residential design SPD, because if we take those 21 square metres out of the sums, then I wouldn't suppose it does meet our space and amenity requirements.
So yeah, I mean, I would say that it's not perfect. It is an alternative to the slightly larger space. It is set away from the road, so I suppose you could give it some element of privacy. It wouldn't just have to be completely open to that parking space. I mean, these 6 parking spaces on the site are not going to be being used with, vehicles coming in and out regularly. It's not like a car park, supermarket car park. It's so it will be relatively quiet most of that time. But that space has been created beyond what was proposed under the previous scheme. As I've said before, we didn't object to the lack of amenity space on the previous scheme. So we're in a position where we can only really consider the issues that we've refused it on. We can't start to introduce new reasons for refusal, because there we would be likely to come up against costs at appeal, should this go to appeal.
I take your point, Toby, but in paragraph 12 of the report that's been prepared on page A6 says that there's a number of considerations material to the determination of the application. Quality of accommodation, neighbours' residential amenity, and a number of other things. And, this is a different application, which has changed somewhat. And I'm just concerned that space isn't viable. But my final question, because I'm aware of the hour, I want to turn to something Mr. Cowan said during his presentation, which was about the lack of sort of supporting documents. And I think it's been said by other members here this evening, it's a great pity the applicant isn't here. And it's also a great pity that some of the documents that I'm certainly used to seeing aren't included. Things like the traffic study and survey, things like the hydro survey, the flooding and sort of surface water survey. And could you tell me if there were supporting documents submitted for the previous applications that were refused? Things like traffic management, flooding, surface water, even landscaping strategies I would often expect to see in these sort of applications, because if they were included in the previous applications that were refused but weren't included in this application, then that would give more weight to me when determining what to do with this application in terms of these other points, because the developer, it seems to me, has been really rather vague in what's been submitted to us. Everything from the number of trees being removed and which trees are being removed to the lack of documents submitted. It really does leave quite a bad taste in the mouth, if I'm quite honest.
So in terms of the documents submitted, the only documents that I think was submitted under the previous application that isn't submitted this time was a sort of viability assessment, which was, they were trying to argue that 3-bedroom units wasn't viable on this site. That was their reason for not complying with the proportion of 3-bedroom units. But other than that, there is a design and access statement which is submitted on both the previous one and this one. And there is a lifetime homes checklist. So actually they have gone through that on the previous one. Let me just double check that they have that, albeit lifetime homes is not current standard that we use.
That seems irrelevant to me then.
But I mean, I think it probably is pretty similar. There aren't. Yes, no, so it's the same. So the application that was considered, the 2018 application that was considered, had the same information basically as this application has.
Right. Just because we've refused other applications when the applicant has failed to robustly demonstrate development would not result in X, be it highway safety, parking, flooding, street water, etc. And it just strikes me that there's been a lack of demonstration from the applicant. They can tick certain boxes, but I shall leave it there given the hour. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Toby, can I just clarify that the only reason it was dismissed at appeal was because they didn't have the 30% of 3-bedroom units. That's the only reason that it was dismissed, the 2018 application. Is that correct?
Okay, so the 2016 application was the one that was refused for 4 reasons, but dismissed only on the 3-bedroom units.
Right.
Then a subsequent application came in, which has an 18 reference, and that was again dismissed on the lack of 3-bedroom units. Then this application's come in, and with 37.5% 3-bedroom units, so thereby overcoming that sole
Point.
reason for
Yes.
refusal. Basically, that's and as you're seeing, as I've shown you slides, the scheme hasn't changed very significantly. I mean, it has changed a bit, but not significantly.
One other point that I had, I didn't see any kind of CGIs or photos of the finished product or what they were applying to develop. And I don't know whether you had any of those, but normally they are sent round in the packs, but I didn't receive any of that information. I don't know if anybody else did. Am I right in thinking that we can't make the applicant come and answer the questions? Is that correct? They come of their own volition, Toby?
Yes, absolutely. So yes, they
Right.
they don't need to come.
Would it be possible to get any more information to fill in some of the gaps? Should we be minded to, say, defer this rather than vote on it? I don't know how members are feeling. Would that be an option? I don't know how you feel about that, but I'm just feeling, and Councillor Giles and everybody else, there's questions we want answered, and we haven't got enough information. There's information there, but we're missing a lot of things.
I suppose, I mean, I guess we consider that there is sufficient information to make a decision on this application, but obviously, it'll be your decision or deferral or whatever. But I suppose consistently we've looked. This is the 3rd application on this site, so I suppose that's.
No, I appreciate
we
that.
we are being consistent really in how we've dealt with those, and the information that we've asked for reflects that.
Thank you. Councillor Thorpe and then Councillor Giles.
I share your unease, Chair. Why am I uneasy? If they've put a 3rd 3-bedroom flat in, they must have made some other changes. I can't discern what they are. I don't feel constrained by what happened in 2018 on this. It's not as though it was that recent. And I do get the sense when I went there, when I read this, that some of it feels unnecessarily cramped and not as good as it could be. So you're right, something like the CGI would certainly help me. Some of the other information would help me. And I haven't got that, so I'm inclined to agree with you that a deferral might be the best bet.
The whole point.
Yes, I certainly feel uncomfortable about the application as it currently stands, but my concern with deferral is that it may leave us open to the developer appealing on non-determination grounds. And so I just wondered if Toby could clarify what the risk is of us deferring as opposed to us making a decision on the information we've got. The developers had ample time to provide information, but I also agree with Councillor Thorpe. 2018 was 4 years ago. Planning policy's changed since then, and I don't feel constrained by 2018 either.
I guess there would be a risk of appeal either way, I suppose. So I don't know that one is more likely than the other.
Chair, I could. The problem I have is that, and I know it might not be strictly relevant, but I find it very odd indeed that I'm being asked to make this very important decision, especially for the residents, not even knowing how these 8 flats are to be heated. Now, I completely take on board what you said about it being down to development control and such like, but it's kind of basic, isn't it? And that makes it very difficult for me to think in terms of supporting the application, put it like that.
I mean, I suppose if we felt it was, I mean, I suppose it's something that could be considered as a condition, if we felt it was necessary to look at that. But as I say, it is covered. It's building control that it's covered by, not development control. But
Councillor Giles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we were to defer, can we, I know we can't force the developer to come and to present before this hearing, but can we force the developer to submit any further supporting documents, i.e., water, traffic management, the 3D sort of CGIs? Can we mandate them to submit any of those documents if we did defer?
we can't mandate them to. We can ask them, but also, I suppose the other thing to look at is the conditions. We've conditioned some of these things, so surface water, sort of reducing the sort of runoff from the sites and that sort of thing, and storage of potential water. We've got conditions on with regard to that. So there are quite a lot of conditions which would control quite a few of these aspects. I think you talked about car parking. That's our engineer has reviewed this, and they're satisfied. So we can only ask, but the applicants submitted this. The application's been validated. It's gone through the process. If there was bits of information that they had to provide, then it would have been picked up at validation stage, and so we're not on a strong grounds to ask for more information. Doesn't mean we can't ask, but we certainly can't insist.
Sure. Through you, Madam Chair. I mean, we've refused, or this authority has refused, other applications before on the grounds. I'm just reading some of the previous documents here. For instance, the applicants failed to demonstrate a suitable drainage strategy could be implemented, which would be contrary to policies 5.12, 5.13 of London Plan, DM4 the core strategy. Things like the applicants failed to robustly demonstrate the development would not result in an adverse impact on highway safety, CS7, DM9, DM10 of the core strategy. And so if we're at risk of sort of a non-determination proceeding, I'm personally minded to go to the vote, Madam Chair, but I don't have a real strong opinion on it either way, whether we defer or move to a vote. But in its current conception, I do have real concerns about this site.
Do the rest of the members have the same concerns?
I have concerns. I can't guarantee they're the same ones, but yes, I do have concerns.
Councillor Park.
I liked it before. I wanted to have a more clarification and further information. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So on that basis, I am going to defer it and ask that we get some more information back on this, and put a motion down that we defer this to a future date. Can I have a raised show of hands at that? Oh, sorry, a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. And those in favour of deferring to a later date? Thank you. 4 and against? Abstain? 1. Thank you. Thank you for time, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry it's late. Thank you. I'll close this meeting at 10:18. Thank you.